All right. Hello, everyone, and what a great session to start off today, right? My name is Unnawut. I'm blockchain lead at SCB10X. I'm doing technical research and product development around blockchain and decentralized finance. And we have here with us Demian Brener. Demian is a co-founder of and CEO of OpenZeppelin, one of the most, if not most reputable blockchain security companies in the field right now, right? Demian, you actually have an industrial engineering background as well, and you were selected for MIT 35 under 35 lists of innovators in 2019. Right, very impressive background, I would say. Demian, pleasure to meet you. Pleasure to have you with us today. Let's start off with a basic question. Right, could you introduce us a bit? What is OpenZeppelin, and what are your goals and vision?
Sure. Hi, Unnawut, and thank you for having me here. Excited to talk. I'm founder and CEO of OpenZeppelin. OpenZeppelin is a leading cybersecurity company focused on blockchain technology. So we created the most popular library for smart contract development, currently used by 99 of the top 100 DeFi projects, over $70 billion of total value locked in the library. Then we do security audits. So we work with some of the best names in the industry, making sure that their decentralized systems work as intended. We work with Coinbase, Compound, and top DeFi and NFT projects in the space. And then we also have a product called Defender, which is a security operations platform for managing smart contracts. And OpenZeppelin's mission is to protect the open economy. We're big believers in economic freedom in the world. And we think that to enable economic freedom, you need an open economy. And for an open economy, blockchain technology is the best enabler for that. So our mission and our contribution to the space is to protect the open economy. So in that way, we can accelerate the adoption of blockchain technology in the world, and thus accelerate the adoption of the open economy within finance.
That's cool. So you mentioned about protecting the open economy, right? And we are seeing new protocols popping up pretty much like around the clock every day. How do you feel about the current environment around protocol security? What are the challenges? What are the improvements that we need to work on?
Well, it's super exciting to see everything that's happening in the space, how the open economy is blossoming. But with respect to challenges, I see there's a big trade-off between moving fast and being secure. On one side, you have projects that they want to move fast, they want to launch new features, they want to get first to market, but moving fast sometimes can break things. And we see multi-million-dollar hacks every week, and that's not good for the industry as well. So how do you balance and how do you manage that trade-off between speed and security is a challenge that most projects are facing. And in particular, the industry is becoming more complex as you have composability and integrations between protocols that adds a layer of complexity, and it's quite challenging from a security standpoint. Then you have scalability solutions, which of course are super important because the space needs to scale, but that comes up with new challenges. And security things that should be taken into consideration. There's also a lot of new people entering the space. So a lot of user education needs to be done in terms of best practices, how to understand projects, how to interact with projects, and what does it mean for a project to be secure. And I would say lastly, also in terms of how I see the industry, there's a shortage of security-oriented people in the space. We need to bring a lot of traditional cybersecurity talent from traditional industry to crypto. So that's also one of our goals.
Right. So speaking of like moving fast and break things in terms of like startup principles, right? When people start writing their own contracts or protocols, right, there's always this question whether we should build first and then worry about security later, right? Or should we take security right from the first day we write our code? Is there a middle ground there? Do you have any suggestion there?
So at OpenZeppelin, we think of security as a mindset, not as a one-off activity. we think security is a continuous effort that's integrated across the whole development process from start to, I wouldn't say finish, but continuously. Uh, there's this preconception that audits are kind of the silver bullet where you go and do an audit and that's a guarantee that your protocol is safe, and that's not true. Um, Actually, like if you look at OpenZeppelin, what we try to do is in our mission to protect the open economy, we do different things. First, we provide vetted smart contract modules so that projects can build their smart contracts in a way that's at least building with secure infrastructure or secure best practices in place. Then you will inspect doing security audits. Then you would manage your operations as you launch and as you do things. So how do you, I think to go back to your question, the way to think about this is not to leave it to the end of the project. Okay, I develop and then I hire a security firm, but how do I develop a core competency of security within my workflow and within my team?
Right, I see. So, and you have been in the industry with OpenZeppelin for a big while, right? Since 2015. Like, what do you find as like common or major roadblocks that teams and companies see when they do smart contract development?
So, yes, we've been in the space for a long time, so we've seen everything. There's a lot of security best practices out there that the space and we learned by experience. But we see teams that lack this general knowledge of these best practices. If you Google things and you are in different sources, you can get these best practices. But there's a lot of educational efforts that need to be done to widespread that knowledge. And there's a lot of integration of these best practices into the tool set that developers and development teams use. So that's something that I think should be improved, and it's a kind of like a major roadblock that we see in teams today, especially as teams are created by people that are new to the space and they come from a different background and they need to be quickly educated on how to operate these systems. Then there's the more of the how do you manage your project after you launch? How do you manage upgrades? How do you manage admin functions? Variables react to potential threat, and finally there's a lot of unknown unknowns as well. This is a new industry, new language, new technology. Projects feel a little bit blind and in terms of the complexities and the unknown unknowns that can happen. So how do projects or development teams navigate that is also a challenge that we see.
I see. So I guess there are like different school of thoughts, right? When coming to like smart contract development, how do we make them secure? Like, do you have any recommendation, any approach that like a team or a company could take to make sure that the protocol is secure?
Again, I would think of security as a mindset and a continuous effort, not as a one-time thing. In particular to smart contract development, I would definitely recommend not reinventing the wheel and not developing a smart contract from scratch, especially if you're using standards. I would tell you, go to OpenZeppelin contracts library. It's open source. It's free on GitHub. npm download, fork it, copy paste it, and use that as a starting point. Of course, you will need to customize things. Of course, many projects are innovating and they're creating new types of things. But actually, one of our goals at OpenZeppelin, especially with the contracts library, is how do we understand what's happening in the space, see what types of smart contracts are being popular, and how do we standardize them and make them widely available to a general community. So I would definitely recommend starting there.
Right. And yeah, that's a very good point, because nowadays, I guess, like when people start developing their own ERC20, 721, or whatever standards out there, right? People usually now recommend that you don't go and build it yourself. So just use OpenZeppelin contracts. That's the most secure one. So that's an impressive feat that you have done for the past few years. So OpenZeppelin has been around for a while, right? And then we know you guys for the standard implementations of ERC20 and so on. We are also like know you for your security audits, performing like security audits for very popular protocols, right? Compound, MakerDAO, Alpha Homura, even the Solidity compiler. You did audit a Solidity compiler before too. I heard that this is not all, right? You have new products coming up. What's the newest thing that you have at OpenZeppelin right now? Can you tell more?
Yes. So we launched a couple of months ago a product called Defender, which we're super excited about, and it's receiving great traction and attention in the market. Defender is a security operations platform, which is a concept that exists in Web 2.0 and traditional technology, but we're bringing it into the crypto smart contract world. So basically what that means is, once you have a system that's operational, how do you manage it? How do you control it? How do you automate it in a way that reduces the risks and implements security best practices to make sure that what development teams are doing is in standard with what the security best practices in the space are. So let me give an example. One example is, let's say there's a problem with your development team, and you have your system that is operational, you have smart contracts and money flowing, and you identify that there's something wrong or you're getting attacked. So Defender will really easily allow you to implement a circuit breaker and pause your smart contracts to stop that attack from happening, or mitigating the risk or mitigating the losses of that attack. Or again, you need to conduct an upgrade to a particular smart contract or change a variable. With Defender, that's super easy. It's a really nice user interface that's connected actually to a multi-sig that you can use and have different people sign it. And really straightforward, minimizing both the human error component and also reducing the surface attack of your system's operations.
Right. So you mentioned like the OpenZeppelin Defender is able to monitor and detect like attacks, right? Can you elaborate a bit more? Like how does that work?
Yeah, one of the features that Defender has is called Sentinels, which is we can call it a monitoring system for monitoring sensitive functions and get alerts on specific events. An example is there's a very cool project called Pull Together that they support multiple networks. And they want to make sure that their smart contracts on all these networks have enough funds so that the systems work correctly. So what they did was they're using Defender Sentinels to get alerts when the funds are low on a particular smart contract on a particular network. And they actually use another feature in Defender called Relayer that allows you to send a transaction using like a regular HTTP API. So that takes care of the private key, storage, gas pricing, management, resubmissions, and everything. So you could connect those two so that in the end you can automate part of the operational aspect of your project, which without Defender, we've seen projects doing that, and they need to spend months building their own tools, which slows down their own processes. And also these tools are increased surface attack for potential hackers to leverage that. So I think Defender is our contribution to the space, to projects that already launched and are operational. Aave is another example of a project that uses Defender. So we're super excited about it.
I see. What's sort of like the effort in order to like integrate Defender into like say existing protocol? Does it take like weeks or?
No, it's actually relatively easy. No, you can go into Defender. Creating an account is actually free, and then you have different tiers, and you will implement different smart contracts, like your smart contracts, into the system. But the system is not. It's not that Defender stores or manages a smart contract, just a user interface for you to use it. And then we have a bunch of examples or tutorials on how to use the function, but I think what's important is that you don't need to change your systems, or the integration is super seamless.
I see. I see. I see. Well, that sounds great. So just maybe stepping back into a bigger picture a little bit, right? So what suggestions do you have for people, say, like you mentioned, that we shouldn't leave security to the very end and then leave it to the security auditors to do that, right? Are there any practices or any tools that you would recommend for people to develop or review or deploy smart contracts?
Yes. So I would divide the process in different stages. First, in terms of building, again, based on what we discussed earlier, I would build on top of a strong foundation using standards and using OpenZeppelin contracts or other projects that have been in the space for much longer and that are widely used. I would use their code, but I would be aware that small modifications to those contracts might seem trivial, but we've seen cases that creates an unforeseen vector attack, which is something complicated, which is why you need a security audit, which is the next step. Hiring a security audit firm. There's a lot up there, which is great because the industry needs to mature and you need a lot of service providers. But an audit is not a guarantee. I would say you need to develop security as a core competency internally in your team. There's a lot of great security let's say security and smart contract in general best practices that I would recommend. From courses and books, starting with Mastering Ethereum by Andreas Antonopoulos, which is a great book. There's another really cool book called Ethereum for Web Developers that was written by Santiago Palladino, which is a fantastic engineer, actually one of our core devs in our team. There's also another security development series of workshops that OpenZeppelin is doing. These are led by one of our top researchers called Martin Abatemarco, which is great, and he's doing a great work, and people are really enjoying it. There's a lot of security games out there. There's Ethernaut, which is something we did a couple of years ago, which is kind of like this catch the flag wartime war game kind of thing, where you need to start hacking different smart contracts to get into levels, and it's really, really fun, and that's I would say it's key for development teams to either develop this skill internally using these resources, or actually hiring, if possible, a dedicated security team internally.
Right. I have to second that recommendation on Ethernaut. I tried it out myself, completed all the challenges, had to look up some answers sometimes, but it was very a big joy to learn about smart contract security. And it's also on testnet, right? We are actually doing actual attacks on smart contracts, but although on testnets. So that's I also highly recommend that to everyone. Okay, so so just a few more questions, I guess. So right now, as a smart contract developers, right, you go around, you see GitHub, you see Twitter, and so on, and then you see different resources, different opinions on security. Do you have any recommendation for smart contract developers? How do they keep themselves up to date with like the latest best practice? Any good resources?
Well, Twitter is a great resource, of course. You have a lot of people talking, but usually there's very good content, especially on like attacks or news related to security per se. There's very good resources online. I know Consensus Diligence has I think a security best practices, or they compile the like vulnerabilities found, which is pretty good. Well, the courses and the books that I recommended are pretty good. There's also another thing that Defender has, and I'm talking a lot about Defender, but there's this feature called Advisor, which is basically a database of security best practices. So you can sort them by deployment monitoring development in terms of categories, and then you can sort them by how hard or easy they are to implement. And I know teams that use that as their Bible to be updated on what's happening in the space, and also to use those within their development processes so that they can make sure that they're building with security best practices.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So we are now in 2021, right? And looking back to 2015, you have been through ups and downs, 2017, 2018, and also 2021, right? How do you view the industry? How has the mindset has changed since then?
Well, OpenZeppelin was started 6 years ago. So actually, even before Ethereum got started, we were doing smart contracts on Bitcoin using color coins at the day. So we're true believers in the power of this technology, regardless of implementation. But then Ethereum came up, which we were super excited about, and it was the DAO hack days, which was a big event where everyone understood that security was a big problem. We knew that very few people knew how to actually develop smart contracts, but then we realized that even fewer people knew how to develop money in a secure way. And security is critical to making this open economy work and people to trust it and use it. So then we've been through the ICO days, which from a security standpoint, even though it was very new and there was a lot of complexity, but comparing it to today, ICO smart contract, token smart contract, or crowd-sale smart contracts were relatively more straightforward and easy compared to a DeFi protocol that has a lot of functionalities and incentives, and then interacts with a couple of other 5 projects. And I would say the complexity of auditing DeFi projects today, the industry has matured, the industry has evolved and become more complex, which is a good thing because we want the open economy to be, provide more value to users, which is actually happening, and that makes me happy. But from a security standpoint, that brought new challenges that didn't exist back in the day, and I would expect this trend to continue. And another trend that I've been seeing, of course, is there's a lot of activity and there's been a lot of professionalization since the early days till today. As I said before, new security firms emerged doing security audits. Security tooling also emerged, which I think is good for the ecosystem, even though a lot needs to be improved there, and the tools are already mature, but I think those were good contributions. More like platforms or tools for after project launches, which is what we're doing with it there. So the industry is maturing, the space is professionalizing itself, which I think is important to create a robust infrastructure and be able to onboard the next set of users to the open economy.
Right. And I guess now we see especially in 2020 and 21, right? We are seeing emerging chains that are EVM compatible, at least. How do you view that? Would that impact how we do security?
Well, each chain has its own particularities. Our perspective or our view from OpenZeppelin is that we are very platform agnostic. We really care about economic freedom. We really care about blockchain technology and smart contracts, regardless if they're in Ethereum, Polkadot, or any other chain. We actually worked with many of those firms. We also work with layer 2 solutions. So I think this good experimentation, and I would expect some of them to get traction, and let's say people would the ones that get traction, people or firms who specialize on those in particular to provide services or products around it to make security something that's implemented in those systems.
I see. So looking a bit into the future, in the near future, right? We are expecting a lot of development on Ethereum in the next half year and also into 2022, right? We have EIP 1559 coming up just around the corner in August. We have the merge where we'll move Ethereum will be moving to proof of stake, and also Ethereum 2.0. Right? Do you have any early views on those, and how would that impact like smart contract security?
I think we're super excited about all these things happening because it shows that the industry is maturing and demand is there. We just need to make sure that the networks actually are able to support all the transaction volume out there. With respect to, in particular, to security, the way we see it or way we think that security in the future at OpenZeppelin is that the industry is changing or must change from thinking of security as a single bulletproof thing that you do as an audit to more of a risk management. Systems are operational, and systems, there's sort of preventive measures that you can take from doing audits, formal verification, developing with the best smart contract library, etc. But then after you launch, it's code that powers real money, and there will be unexpected things. So we think the space will move towards risk management. And with respect to risk management, how you do risk management is how you assess risk and how do you mitigate risk. So a lot of effort and exciting things will happen in those two areas, in particular with respect to runtime security, which is more about assessing and mitigating the risk. So we think that's an area that's going to be super exciting in the next few months or years.
I see. Exciting times. So just before we end the session, do you have any final piece of advice you can give to the audience when they go and building their next DeFi product or protocols?
Well, the most important thing is, again, think of security as a mindset and as a continuous effort. You should develop that core competency internally, either by learning yourself or bringing someone to the team if possible. And don't leave it till the end, because that's when we see that problems can come up. So we're super positive about this in the industry, and we're excited to see what people build and how they secure themselves.
That sounds good. So we covered a lot of things in just half an hour. We talked about like the challenges around smart contract development. We talked about how we should go about ensuring protocol security. We talked about your up and coming product called Defender. We also talk about like how the security landscape will change in the future, right? Thank you so much for your time, Demian. It's been a very pleasant chat, and hope to talk to you again soon.
Likewise, Unnawut. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye.